Hello and welcome to another Connecting Consciousness. A bit more than an update. We're going to try and do a proper show, and just at this moment I've just been joined by the latest addition to the family. This is Snowstorm, and he joined us simply because we thought Snowstar might not last very long. My very special white cat, who we were having to give him injections twice a day, and we thought looking a bit dodgy. So here we are, and fortunately, Snowstar has made a bit of a recovery. He's might be with us for quite a little while, and I do hope he is. So that's the debut of Snowstorm. Whether he'll be as difficult and as bad-tempered and as endearing as the older white cat, we're yet to find out. Right, so let's chew. It's just chewing the lead. Hold on, we don't want to be cut off here. Hang on, come here, you. Come sit on my knee. There we are. Right, there we are. Right, let's start. So first of all, I wanted to draw your attention, if you've not already seen it, to Kerry Cassidy's latest update. Normally I don't mention other people too much, but Kerry's always been pretty good with her information. She's been pretty near the mark. Always found that the information that she's had, although she gets it differently perhaps from me in many ways, they do on many occasions sort of complement each other. And I think it's worth having a look at that, and because I'm going to talk about some of the things that she's spoken about. She does talk about Charlie Ward. I'm not going to go into the personalities or the individuals. I'm going to have to just move the cat. He's gone off with a wire. Can you just get him? Okay, this is the thing. Never work with children or animals. But however, they are very endearing, and I would always work with animals. Right, here we go. So first of all, let's talk about the element that, thank you for grabbing him. Let's talk about the element that we noticed particularly with the Kerry Cassidy point. It was literally about the quantum banking. What Kerry had said was that a large number of the sources that she'd had, who were coming from the grey area, shall we say, were basically saying either it's all nonsense, don't worry about it, or it won't make any difference. Whereas you've got some of the other side saying, look, it's a game changer. And I wanted to, give you my view on what I've come across, and I think it's quite an alarming element. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's just an alarming element because it's a concept that nobody else, to my knowledge, has been talking about on the alternative site, on the free media, shall we say. I haven't heard anyone else tell you what I'm about to tell you. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't. It's just I haven't picked it up. And I want to tell you this, and I have to be careful, because if I mention certain things, then because we're based in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, then this can be pulled specifically because of the law now. If we mention a certain frequency, or we mention something to do with injections in a negative way, then this will be pulled and I won't get my message out. So that's how unfree we are at the moment. So I'm going to have to choose the words carefully to try and get around all these problems. If we know our history, and most of you who listen to me and others know the fact that the human race has always been looked on as slaves by the elite. Just like perhaps, you go to a cattle farm and you might go and buy 20 or 30 cows, and each cow has a certificate with it which tells you, that it's where it's from and it's had all its things, and I can't even say the word, can I? It's had all the needles in it, and that's how you buy and sell, and that's your passport, as it were, for that animal. Well, we know that the birth certificate, which nearly every country I'm aware of on this planet does, in one shape or another, was for many years the method by which the elite could trade and put short options on human race. So, for instance, someone with a postcode or a zip code that was coming from a very wealthy area, and that person who then has a child, we might assume that that child would grow up to earn a lot of money, pay more taxes, and therefore that's a more valuable commodity. And so we might be able to say that projecting ahead 20, 30 years, 40 years, that individual will be worth this much. And so the birth certificate has always been a method by which the old paper-driven analog system could predict or have a guess at what the value of the human race was. And indeed, on stock exchanges, these were sold, not on the shop floor, of course, in secret places, but they were traded and sold. Now, imagine the new system which is being installed, and it is being installed. It's been installed, we know, in Deutsche Bank, and we know in Bank of England. That's why those banks have been going through a refurbishment. Imagine that you had computers that could think close on to the speed of light. There are about 4 countries in the world that have these machines, actually, from a military perspective. So imagine that an individual had a needle in them, and in that health-giving elixir there were some micro computers that were able to communicate with receptors that were on every lamppost, every cell tower, and not only said where you were, but looked about how much you were earning and what deals you were doing and all the rest of it. And it was all in real time, because the quantum computers can work in real time. So my call out, my warning is that the bad people, the bad guys, would like to use this quantum system as a more revolutionary and advanced way of monetizing the human race. So birth certificates won't matter. The fact is that every human being they'd know exactly where you were, what you were doing, how much money you were making. And here's the big deal. In the old system, when you were born, they hadn't a clue how long you'd live, really. So they might take a bet that you'd, die at 70, 80, 90, 100. And how much money could you make? They know when you retire. So that's a cut-off point. But with the modern system, they'll know, when you're ill, and if you go to hospital, and if you're likely to die. So they won't need insurance in the same way, because can you believe it? In the old system, individuals were being insured, though they don't even know it. So an organization that maybe has 5 million people from this particular postcode, or 20 million from this area or this country, they would take an insurance out so that so money of the people that they are projecting in the next 10, 20 years will make so much money. Those of you who've played the stock exchange, I haven't, but I've seen people that have, you can actually put short-term bets on a company. You could say, I bet that the stocks go down in that company in the next 24 hours. And if the stocks actually do go down, you make money on the fact that you bet that stocks would go down. Now, to most people, this is just nonsensical, but there are so many ways of making money in the stock exchange. So my concern is that there's a real move afoot to attempt to monetize the human race through this system, which allows them to know exactly where we are at any moment of the day, how much money we're making, what the health is, and to speculate, to barter, to trade on the human race, just as you would as cattle in a cattle market. When the guy's shouting, taking the bets, and I can't do it, but how much money the cow goes up. People raise their hands up or nod their head or wave their tickets, whatever it is. Imagine all that done on an AI system. That's the point. This is the worry, that it's all AI. Now that information it's being stored as you would expect it to be stored, but I am very concerned that there's an AI element to it, which would see that as part of its control of the human race. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to happen What I'm saying is this is what the bad guys intend to happen. Now, on the other side of the fence are the good guys who actually see this as a way that the Rothschilds and the handlers of the Rothschilds are pushed out of the banking system. Because if you can return to a precious metal standard or some form of a real wealth, then you actually don't create above the inherent wealth of your country or your bloc or your group, whatever you might be part of. And so two different factions have got two different ideas for this. And that is why Kerry's quite right that both sides are perhaps not wanting to talk about it. And one side is saying it's a game changer, it's going to, revolutionize humanity, and the other side is saying it's going to make no difference at all, because they've both got their eye on a completely different outcome on the same principle. So that's what I wanted to say, and I don't believe there is anyone else in the alternative media who's had that information, and I want to give that. So anybody who's saying blindly that this is a great thing for humanity perhaps needs to realize that the negative side is also wishing to hijack it, because what we found with Satanists is they cannot create, they copy, they can't come up because they've lost that divine connection. So what Satanists do is they attempt to steal something that's already there or copy something that's there, because they can't create it themselves. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's a piece of artwork or poetry or what have you. And so it would be very handy for them, from their perspective, to hijack this and to monetize the human race, and with a network of high frequency things around the planet that you're in connection with, reacting with what might be in your body. I mean, you can tell I'm trying to be very careful here. It's terrible, isn't it? It's not a free country at all. And sending that information back, you would have that. So how do you get these things in your body? Well, the British government has agreed to set up a huge number of what they're calling testing stations. And this has been known for a good couple of weeks now. And even the main media are covering it, although not in any detail. Literally, you could go to a shopping mall and there would be a mobile testing station there. There's enough money being pushed into this, and I'm always suspicious. When money is not an object, I know that the bad guys are behind it. You see, the good guys are always scraping around for coins, whereas the bad guys just, they don't have a problem with money, do they? So every city, every town, every place will have a testing station under the idea that the British government has got out. And the point is that you would go in, you'd be tested to see if you've got the virus. Simple as that. Or you can go there to have your needle to protect you against the virus. But Kerry's actually more accurate than most, whilst I'm sure that that's what the label or the billboard or the poster will say outside. They're very interested in the humanity of Great Britain. Now, those of you who've been really good and have stayed with me and have listened will know that for many years I've used this phrase that Great Britain is the magical isle, and the United States is where the fight has got to be fought, where the battle is going to be. And those of you who have listened and have remembered will remember my phrase. And that's exactly what's happening. The United States is where the battle is being fought physically. And Great Britain is the magical isle. And that is why that the British Isles, United Kingdom, predominantly England, not Scotland or Wales, have been chosen for this experiment by the elite. And it is an attempt to ascertain at what rate the British population is leaving the third dimension up through the fourth into the fifth. Now, I know that is, wow, that's a really big thing. And people who don't listen to me or don't listen to our topic will just switch off, and they'll just go and, do whatever they do because it's just too much for them to even cope with. But this is why something up 100 billion is being funneled or will be funneled into this, and a huge amount of money, because they need to know how the British people are evolving and changing. They've done everything they can. They've sprayed chemtrails. They've done just so much. So now they want to measure what effect all of their efforts have done in slowing down the development of humanity. Now, it's not done in France. It's not going to be done in Germany, because Britain is, when I say the magical isle, I don't mean magic. I'm talking about the divine place. It's all countries are divine. All are created by the great creator. And some, like Southern Ireland or parts of Britain like Cornwall or Norway, have very, very special sacred and energy connections. But Britain as a what we call Albion, as an island, is rather unique. And that is why the elite across the planet have agreed that the testing will be done in one place, and one place only, Britain. Now, whether it goes all the way through, I just don't know. But I need to alert you and to say that Kerry's actually on the button. She's right with this. I don't know who she's getting her information from. It's not the same source that I'm getting it from, I'm sure of that. But it is, by and large, accurate. That certain individuals who are, forget the Rothschilds, forget all those, right at the very top. Two things. They're concerned at how fast humanity is escaping their control, how fast we're evolving, but they also are trying to work out, of all the methods that they've used, just how many months have they slowed down the development of humanity. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you on that one. Puerto Rico saw the destruction of its radio telescope. And those of you, again, who've got really good memories will remember that a couple of years back, maybe 2 or 3 years back, there was a number of explosions and damage done to radio telescopes. And there was a big debate about that at the time. There are two things going on. There are more non-human craft coming into the radius of Earth, can I put it to you like that? And there are a number of things that look like asteroids, which aren't asteroids, which are also slated to be coming in before Christmas. It doesn't mean that you're going to see them with the naked eye. It means that they will be within detection range of Earth's shield, shall we say, its electronic surveillance system. And the only radio telescopes that are going to allow to be operated are those that report back to the central command. In other words, any radio telescope that has a modicum of independence won't be allowed to operate, because they don't want what they are going to be seeing shared with people. Now, you might say, oh look, I've got a really good telescope, and I know someone that's got a really good telescope, I'll spot it. No, you won't, because the point is that radio telescopes don't work by optics. They work on a frequency and electronic way, and so these objects are coming in hidden from the human eye. Sometimes they're not even coming in on an infrared scale. So if you're looking through a telescope, something may only be 100 miles out, but you don't see it. But if you had a radio telescope, you would be able to create an image on the screen which would show you, it wouldn't be a photograph, but it would be an image, electronic image of what the thing looked like. So the reason that that telescope in Puerto Rico was taken out was that there was no agreement between those who control the world and the operators of that. So all of those telescopes that are operating are part of the cabal, basically. Or they're separate and they're part of predominantly the United States military, which is not part of the cabal. And the cabal can't go easily and blow them up. And the military are then fully aware, but of course they're not sharing that either, because it's a very momentous, and both sides are playing each other. So I wanted to talk about that. And Kerry also mentioned, the only reason I'm picking up on it, because she talked about Arizona. she did say that there were some things happening in Arizona, and I can confirm that there are a number of military exercises occurring in Arizona. You wouldn't imagine that to be necessary because it's not far from Texas. It's not had a history of sort of Black Lives Matter or Antifa or any huge groups wanting to push to the bounds of democracy. So this is more of I could call it more of a pooling of resources. There are a huge number of underground bases and tunnels in Arizona. In fact, I believe I'm right in saying that there are more tunnels, square miles of tunnels under Arizona than any other American state. So that might be an interesting thing to watch to see where we go with that. Now, do you remember that I made that joke that somebody was complaining that I had pyramids, and I showed you my orgon or orgonite pyramids that they were complaining about, and I wanted to show you this one because this is rather good. This is another pyramid. It's actually just a lump of granite, but it's been made into a pyramid. But I wanted to show it to you for a reason. And those of you who have an interest in British history, here we go. In about 1230, 1240, so Middle Ages times, a bridge was built from the south bank of London to the north bank of London. And it stood there for a very long time. And then at about 1860, it was removed and a new bridge was built in about 1860. In 1967, that bridge was taken down and a new bridge put up. But the bridge that was taken down, that had been put up in the Victorian era, was made of granite, and it came from Bodmin, which is in Cornwall, the southwest of England. And it was bought by an American. We call it London Bridge. And an American bought it. It was disassembled in about 1968. All of the granite blocks were sent to Arizona, and by about 1970, 1971, the London Bridge was rebuilt, and it was a tourist attraction. I don't know if it's still going now, but nevertheless, that's the history of it. So this is a piece of granite from London Bridge, which was disassembled, taken to Arizona, and as you can imagine, lots of the granite, they couldn't fit it into the right place. Well, they used as much as they could. So the bits that were left over, they decided to sell as souvenirs. That's a very capitalist way, and it's quite fun, isn't it? So somebody decided that a raggedy piece of old granite wasn't going to be very pleasing to the eye, so it was fashioned into a pyramid shape, found its way to the Tucson Mineral and Crystal and Fossil Fair. Somebody then bought it from the Tucson show in Arizona, and here it is with me on my little collection. So there we go. There's another pyramid to add to my collection of pyramids. And if you don't like pyramids, I'm very sorry. I won't stop collecting them. All right, so that's that. We were talking a little bit about the situation in the White House, and I can confirm that a lot of the media coverage of supposedly people trying to get into the White House is not quite accurate. There has been sniper fire aimed at the White House from some of the government federal buildings, can you believe it, and private buildings, which I can't say they overlook the White House, but you can get a view. There are also some other vantage points that can be used. And I don't want you to think of an ongoing gun battle. What I want you to think about is 1, 2, or 3 shots fired on a Monday morning, and then 4 or 5 days later, 1 or 2 shots fired, and then 4 or 5, 6, 7 days later, another couple of shots fired. And it is true that every time this happens, teams go out, helicopters are out, and a number of people have been caught. People have been wounded in the crossfire. And this is an ongoing thing. Why won't the president talk about it? Because unfortunately, to talk about it is to talk about the people who are behind it. And these people are incredibly powerful. They are still in a very powerful position, excuse me, very powerful position on the planet, and it's not the right time to take them on head on, unfortunately, and I wish it was. Supreme Court, those of you who again have got good memories, I've been banging on about the Supreme Court. It's all going to be sorted by the Supreme Court ever since the Chief of the General Staff basically said to Joe Biden, no, we're not going to go in and hook Trump out. You've got to do that through the Supreme Court. That mirrored what I'd been saying, and what we've got, I think, is a situation where if a sizable corruption, a sizable ballot or vote rigging can take place, then it has to go to the Supreme Court. As a president, there's often, the hanging chads, what was that, 2001? That went to the Supreme Court when it's very, very close. So I do think that it will go to the Supreme Court, and they will have to make a judgment on whether the corruption is just localized, and if it's localized, on whatever the result is, it will stay, or if the corruption is states-wide, then I think they will either call for another re-election, do it all over again, or they will take out the corrupt ballots. I don't know how you do that, but there is an option. They take them out, and then whatever is the result after you've removed those corrupt ballots, that is the result that they will go with. So that is the situation that we're looking at. So quite a bit of news for you. Please go and do your own research, and I would be very interested to see how others pick up on what I've said. So right, let's go over and do some questions.
Okay. First question is from Maria from the Netherlands, who says, "Hi Simon and Becky, many thanks to you and your team for all the great work you do. I've just watched the most recent video of Amazing Polly. It concerns a military coup by the Democrats that seems to be in the making. When President Trump doesn't leave office on January 22nd, they apparently plan to remove him by force. Already the Democrats are manipulating information using military DARPA-produced technology and techniques in order to undermine every statement of President Trump. In her video, Amazing Polly provides many clues that the Democrats are going to prevent a second term of President Trump by all means necessary, and that they won't shy away from fraud and violence to succeed. I also heard rumours that the people at the polling stations will be attacked by violent Black Lives Matters and Antifa mobs to prevent them from voting. All in all, a very alarming picture. What is your take on this? Does the military support for the Democrats outweigh the military that supports Trump? I'm really worried by the prospect of it all. I hope President Trump has something up his sleeve that will incapacitate these evil forces. Thank you."
Right, the military do not support the Democrats. Full stop. The Democrats have access to a paramilitary force. The Democrats do not have access to regular military in the United States, but they do have access to private security firms, quasi-military militias, but they don't have access to 750,000 American troops. Don't be concerned about it, because if the Constitution was in any shape, way or form threatened, then the United States military would be empowered to protect the Constitution. That is why those Kabbalistic organizations are using third parties to create the violence. They're using predominantly young men, but not necessarily so, to foment problems, troubles, and everything else they can do. They're not doing it themselves, they're enacting others to make that happen. So of course this is all going to happen. Absolutely it is. That's why I'm not in Arizona at the moment, simply because I actually think that it's a very, very volatile situation, and it has to play out. These people who fought tooth and nail to remove President Trump from an impeachment, through a Russian scam, through many other things, shooting at the White House, trying to poison them, all of these things. Someone or organisation that's prepared to do all that, why wouldn't they pay mobs to attack polling stations? They don't want people to vote physically, because the more they can intimidate American voters from voting in person, then the larger number of fake ballots they can push in. That is exactly what they intend to do. They intend to flood through with fake ballots. No question of it. That's how they intend to win. And that's why President Trump is coming out and saying it. Now, the leader of the Senate, of course, had to make a statement saying, look, peaceful transition, because you have to uphold the Constitution. And, Kayleigh came on to speak on behalf of the president. She said, I want to clarify, and basically saying that, if the election is free and fair, of course, the president will abide by that. The implication being that we know the election's not going to be free and fair. And your question is exactly that. It is not going to be free and fair. But the point is whether it's widespread or whether it's just localized. Because if it's just localized, you can just take out those districts that have had the voting and you could run with the result. But if it's systemic right throughout many of the states, then that seriously calls into question the reality of the truth of that election. So it's a very good question. Most of the Connecting Consciousness members in the US I have spoken to are not going out after they voted. They're going to vote because they believe in voting if they can, and they'll then not go out for 3 or 4 days. So if like me, you've eaten into your food stores because of the virus situation and the lockdown and supermarkets running out of food, it might be a good time just to try and build some stock back up, because there may be at least a fortnight of trouble in some cities. In Spain, the military are on the street in the major city. There's a curfew there. We know here in Britain that the British people have been threatened by the Prime Minister that if we don't take seriously the virus, British people are not taking the virus at all seriously at the moment, he's threatening to put the military on the streets, put the army on the streets and have a curfew. Now, when the military were contacted, they said, well, we don't know anything about this. So what the Prime Minister is doing is he's using it as a threat. He's not even spoken to any of the military. He's just saying, if you don't do this, etc., I'll do that. So, we are moving towards a phase of our life where it will not be uncommon to have military on the streets in some locations, and there'll be a curfew. This is happening in many countries where the energy of the human race is wanting to evolve. We're wanting to move up. We are ascending, and the fourth dimension and the evil part of the control system doesn't want to let go of us. And this is what's playing out, because remember what I've said, that can't really manipulate your soul or your higher self. So what they can do is physically imprison you. So that's the only tool they've got, really, is to act on us physically. So in terms of that, so that's what's going on. We've got to go through this. I do believe it will be fine in 2021, but as I've always said, and again, those of you who've listened to me, rough road ahead, but it will be fine. It was a really good question. I'm sorry to have gone on, but it does actually play on to what I've been saying. Thank you, Becky.
Okay, thank you. Just before I read the second question, I just thought I'll address the fact that Freya is wearing a sort of a jumpsuit today, because people are going to notice and write in. Okay. Yesterday went out for a walk with some of her friend dogs. She snagged herself on some barbed wire and had some stitches, and so she's in this jumpsuit instead of the cone of shame. Oh. She's very well and she's fine. Right. And I just thought I'd address that. It's not the fact that it's freezing cold here now, which it pretty much is.
Well, that's why my Becky's in attendance, and has been looking after the dog tremendously. It's one of those things that when you have this type of dog that wants to be out there, it's not it's a working Cocker Spaniel. That's a dog that was retrieves game birds and things like that.
Although she doesn't do that, but in her genes, it's in her genetics, isn't it?
Of course, we don't shoot birds and hunt them, but that's the genetic breeding of that dog. So why have we got a dog like that? Because it's a very kind and gentle dog. You've seen Freya; she's very kind and gentle, but it means they go headlong into the bush, and they can get themselves caught on barbed wire. So I wasn't going to mention it because I didn't think anyone would think anything of it. I think people would say, yeah, Great Britain, terribly cold, terribly wet place, so they've got a coat on the dog. So I wasn't going to mention it, but it's your dog, so that's fine. Next question, please.
Okay, next question is from Xanthi in England, who says, "Hi Simon, could you comment on the benefits or not of common law and the concept of taking back your legal fiction and becoming a living man or woman? Is this a wise or necessary thing to do at this time? Thanks, Xanthi."
Well, thanks, Xanthi. About 5-6 years ago, it was a very big thing. Look, the reality is that the world that we all live in doesn't recognise that. You might say, yes, it does, but it doesn't. If you stand on a street corner and you quote or you plead the common law, a police officer, a cop, will just say, well, I don't work by that. If you go to a court, you can only win certain things. It works with things like paying your television license or paying tax or something like that. It doesn't challenge the system. So yes, it's important if you can master it and you can fully understand it and you can utilize it, then you can win some memorable battles. For instance, parking ticket. Most people just pay the parking ticket because that's how the system works. As long as people en masse pay it, the system works. If everybody stopped paying it, the system would collapse. But you can use common law to challenge that, and 9 times out of 10 they just give in to you because it's not worth their while taking you to court and doing it. But if you were to do something much more serious that really threatened the control of the elite, then they wouldn't play along with you. So yes, it's important to know that. A few years ago, you could go to the Vatican with your birth certificate and you could get your number taken off the list. In other words, that you would say to the Vatican there was a Monsignor who would be in a small room. It was like a little cubbyhole room, and you would give the details and they would literally take you off their list, so you couldn't be controlled by them. That's not, to my knowledge now, they've stopped that. But that just shows the level of control. So common law, I think, had a great deal of strength, maybe, I don't know, between 1200 and maybe 1500, because there were a lot of common people. Now, I need to be clear that you don't think I'm talking about people being common. I'm talking about ordinary people. But what the system has done is very cleverly make people think that they're not common anymore. They're not part of it. They are separate and individual, and why would I want to join that? And the system looks after me very well, thank you. So common law had more effect in the past than it does now, but if you can master it and know it, then you can win quite a number of small battles. But please don't rely on that if you're thinking of doing something, like, I don't know, climbing in Great Britain, Nelson's Column, and doing something on that. You quoted common law. The judges, which are on maritime law, of course, and you all know about maritime law, they're not going to follow it. So what do we need? We need a complete change. We need a complete change from top down. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca from the USA says, "Hi Simon, Becky and all. So happy to be part of a thriving community of like-minded individuals. My question for Simon is about the attached video of some sort of being or anomaly I captured on my Ring camera. Would love to know your thoughts. I've no problem sharing this if you share this video on your show, so we can get this. We can upload the video and add it."
Well, I have been.
Show this to you.
I have seen the video. I mean, I don't have sight of the questions, but because there was a video with it, I had to see it because I'm not going to answer a question with a video that's been faked. you know, some really clever faked videos out there. I think this is real. I think this is very real. And yes, if Andy can pin this to this question, that'd be great. It's coming from another dimension. It's coming from the fourth dimension. It's not coming fully into phase. It is not a demonic creature. It is a grey, an alien grey. But don't get all excited and think you're going to see a wonderful, pristine, high definition real picture of a grey. You're not, I'm afraid, but you are going to see something arrive from the fourth dimension. And there's a problem, because we see white light, we tend to think, oh, that's a good thing. No, it isn't. It's just the way that it's coming through into this reality. And it moves off very quickly. So I'm happy to say that that looks pretty genuine to me. It looks like a grey. And I think we would have to ask, you would have to ask yourself, why is this come so close to your property? What's the connection? What's going on there? Have you seen them before? Have you had an interesting job that they would want to be involved in and keep an eye on you? So yeah, maybe it's worthwhile. I don't know if you're a CC member, but we could have a chat, right? Yeah. So we can have a chat on that, because that is a genuine, to my view, that's exactly what I would expect to see when something comes through. I note that you said that we're allowed to use it, and I'm very grateful to you. Thank you. We won't put your name in or anything like that. We just put that up there. And thank you for sharing that. That's what CC is about. When we get real stuff, we want to share it. You know, we get more real video footage sent to us than you will ever find on YouTube. You've got so many people who are not part of the organization. They create these fake videos and stick them up on YouTube and love it when people sort of say how great they are. But the people who are members of CC, or the people who have a connection and they send it to us, they do so because they know if it's fake it'll get called out. So they tend to send them to us in good faith. And we've had over the years a number of pictures and videos which are without question the real deal. And if you get a chance, please watch this, because I really love it, because it's exactly what we would expect from an entity coming from the fourth dimension at night time, and then detecting the camera. It does detect the camera and moving away very quickly. Now what's important here is that it could just go back through the portal. It doesn't, which means it's got a task. It's got a job to do, and it can't go back till it's done the task, but it moves away very quickly out of the shot of the camera. Maybe it doubles back or comes round, that we don't know. Thank you for sharing. Wonderful. And if you get any more, please keep us informed. Thank you.
Yeah, I found it fascinating to watch. Okay, the next question is from Bob in Ireland, and has a response from Mara Ross in Ireland as well, so I'll read them both.
Okay.
Hello Simon, Becky, your crew, your four-legged family and all connected consciousness listening. I love you all. My question for Simon: can you tell me if you have any intelligence on who or how or dark forces that are operating in Ireland? We are a society of sleeping, mind-controlled souls who need a kick in the arse to awaken and make positive change. The COVID-19 pandemic, our left-right paradigm political corporate control government structure, coupled with a police state ready to railroad anybody who bucks the system, makes personal sovereignty impossible. Unless, of course, one has the ability to live independently of the state. I realise I'm broadly making assumptions without supporting intelligence. If you can say anything to the people of Ireland to give us hope, to spur positive thought, it will be greatly received. Thank you, Bob. I just want to add here, actually, we do have quite an active Ireland CC group who are very awake and aware. But Mara Ross says, I would also love to hear Simon on what is going on in Ireland, and I feel the same frustration with a seemingly overwhelming number of souls who are fed by the mainstream media and refuse anything else. I did hear with Gene Decode that there were two deep underground military bases in Ireland, one in Sligo or Sligo,
County Sligo.
Okay, somewhere, and the other apparently under Lough Derg, the pilgrimage place. Love and blessings from Dublin.
Right. Sligo is the big one. Right, first of all, thank you. You're absolutely right. Everything you both said is accurate. I don't know why. If you look at the history of Ireland, I'm going to look at the island of Ireland, although predominantly the southern part is the part where there are more standing stones and sacred places. But let's not go into the politics. For me, it's always Ireland and Ireland, the one place. I never understood what was going on there politically, and I never really got involved in it. It is a most marvellous place. And earlier I said, didn't I? I said particularly Southern Ireland, and I said Norway were magical places. It's an incredible connection, and there's a connection with the Jesus line coming over to Cornwall, and then from Cornwall over to the southern part of Ireland. So it has this, and the big question is, how is it that a island, a country, which had such a good beginning, is so far down in the awareness stakes? And this is what happens when you get a community or a place that's very aware. The bad guys come in, did it to the North American Indians, they did it to any Inuit or native groups, and so they did it with Ireland, and they didn't want that quite spiritual advancement. So you know that I don't like the European Union. The European Union went really strongly into the southern era, because the north was part of Great Britain, and did lots of financial deals which are very, very favourable to the southern part of the island. You wouldn't get those deals anywhere else. It locked Ireland in. You've also got a government that's very, very, and I agree with you, I don't like the government in Ireland. I don't like it at all. And they're very part of this Kabbalistic Central European leadership that considers itself very elite. So, all right, that's the situation we're at, and it is the most awfully frustrating for those of you in my organisation or any other organisation that is spiritually aware and fighting for freedom, to think, in the name of God, how is it that so many of my brothers or sisters or my friends around me just don't see how they're being manipulated? And you can pull your hair out about it, and many of us frequently do. But the point is that for thousands of years the human race has been tricked and cheated. Humans are intrinsically good creatures, good beings, and we don't actually look for the evil in people. So when people pull a fast one on us, as we say, or they do a trick, we're not expecting it, because we wouldn't do it, and we don't play dirty. The other side plays dirty. And so what's happened over thousands of years is the human race has allowed itself, I'm using that word loosely, to be put into a position where it's semi-asleep. And that's very true for the statement for the people in Ireland. But like anybody who's asleep, you wake up. And I think what's going to happen, there are a number of countries around the world, and Australia is one of them, where the governments are on very, very shaky ground, because they get so used to pushing people, because the people don't say or do anything, and then they push them too far. So I do think that the future for Ireland is actually pretty good. I really do think that. But I do think that you've got a particularly difficult waking up period. Ultimately, it will only happen because the people feel desperate. Now, at the moment, they don't feel desperate, but it's surprising how quickly a people can go from being content to desperate. Think about politics. General election, an election every 4 years. You can go from being reasonably content to not content to content. And if you look at elections, look at the way it goes. So in the period of 4 short years or 5 years, the public can swing from one aspect to another. Well, we're talking hundreds of years, thousands of years. And I actually think that the people of Ireland are not stupid. I think the people of Ireland have used to other people helping them out, whether it's the European Union or what have you, being told what to do. And I do think that when it's no longer beneficial for them, when they're not getting the deal they want, when they're being pushed around, they will begin to resist. And also there is a big change occurring in governments. It's no longer just okay to be the same satanic elitist person that you were 25, 30 years ago. There is a change taking place. So, don't give up hope. And, I know we don't have a coordinator in Ireland, and I've deliberately left you guys alone from that perspective because you're doing so well. This is the CC group in Ireland. Got a lot of respect for you. You're doing a really great job. And I do drop in and I do keep my eye on what you're doing and saying. And you do take part in demonstrations. You walk the walk. You don't just talk it. There are a lot of people who just talk it and don't do it. You actually go out there and you believe passionately in the right of humanity. So, you're a great asset to Connecting Consciousness. You're a great asset to the whole of Ireland. And frankly, you're something that other organisations could follow your strength and your determination. So thank you, and thank you for the question.
And they also do weekly meditations.
They do weekly meditations.
Share their, experiences, and they also fairly regularly meet up at sacred sites,
yes,
standing stones and things like that. So,
well, that's what I meant when I said they don't just sit; they actually go out and do something about it. And you have in your part of the world some of the most incredibly beneficial energy nexus points or node points that transmit energy right around the planet. And you've got some really good places there that need support and need help. And by going there and showing the support for the earth, showing your support for the divine creation, we're not talking about religion here, we're just talking about the great creator and the way the earth works. You are showing the earth that it's worth not turning back on humanity. It's worth it. That they see, a long time ago, there was a covenant between the earth and the human race. When people like North American Red Indians were across the world, I'm talking about native peoples where we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have to pay rent or mortgages, where we didn't have our boss shouting at us. We just communed with the planet, and we had a fantastic relationship with the earth, and the earth loved us and we loved the earth, and we understood the earth. And then, of course, these people came in and they broke or tried to break that connection. They never fully broke it, but they began to break it. And so we began to forget the covenant that we have with the earth, and that everything lives, everything is part of one, everything communicates. But there are certain places on the earth where that still holds true. Norway, part of Cornwall, South America, and there are other places as well. So, just keep doing what you're doing. That's why I haven't parachuted a coordinator into you, because they're not a top-down organization. You're doing great. You ain't broke. It doesn't need fixing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anna from Ontario, Canada says, hello to both of you. I was drawn to Simon's site 7 years ago because of my interest in the galactics, and I always enjoyed when Simon shared personal stories with us. I always knew I had stories to share, but I just couldn't remember them. Then lo and behold, a few years ago, just upon my waking up, still sleepy, I walked to the hallway and looked downstairs into my living room, and I saw this tall, slim, grey-blue being sitting on my couch looking up at me. His skin looked shiny or slippery. I telepathically asked him what he was wearing. She's put in brackets, old brown cotton farm pants with suspenders. In English, that's a bit different from Canadian. I think she means like dungarees, old-fashioned dungarees.
God.
Odd question, I know. He replied, I wore them so you would feel more comfortable. I proceeded to the bathroom and came back to look, and he was gone. It was like I was in a partial trance-like state. I always wondered who he was. He did seem familiar to me, and I was not afraid. Simon, do you have any ideas? Thank you and much gratitude.
Thank you for sharing it. One of the great things is that, here on Connecting Consciousness, we should be empowered to share our experiences without fear of ridicule or people laughing or saying that you're mad. That's the important part, that we can share this truth, this great truth that is so hidden from the vast majority of humanity. You said he was quite tall, and then he was sitting on the couch, but he was still looking up at you. So we're talking between 5 foot and 5.5 foot, perhaps. I take it there's blue, slightly bluish tinge to the skin, no hair, not huge big eyes, blackish, doesn't mean they were black, but darkish eyes, thin. The story you've given me sounds 100% accurate. That's exactly what they would do. What I can tell you is that you were meant to remember that. I think you've had a long history of seeing these beings, and you normally see them when they don't wear clothes. They don't need to wear clothes. It's not part of their culture. Unless it's a ceremony, then they'll wear ceremonial clothes. And you were meant to remember this, and that's why in this instance this creature put on some very strange, bizarre clothing, which it probably got off a television show. I'm being serious with you. They'll get pictures and things, and they'll think, oh well, we'll do that. So that's clearly what's happened. You have a long history with this being. You've seen it many, many times, but this time you were meant to remember it, and therefore it put those clothes on. Why were you meant to remember it? Because it's meant to start you triggering your memory. Get yourself off to a reputable hypnotherapist and see if you can get them to get you back to see what other experiences you've had. The other possibility is, of course, that more happened with this being than you possibly remember. Again, a hypnotherapist might be able to crack in there and get some information out for you. It's a benign creature. It's not designed to hurt you. It's there to start the next stage of your development. If you could do a drawing and send it to Andy or one of us, I would love to see that. So thank you for sharing. It's genuine. You've not made that up. That's 100% accurate. I know when somebody reads a book or reads something online and creates it, that's genuine. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for empowering people. Let's share these experiences. They're real, for goodness sake.
Okay, thank you. Sam from England says, Dear Simon and Becky, harvesting with respect to humanity. 1. We have the biblical reference of separating wheat from the chaff. 2. We have reptilian harvesting ships collecting humans as a food source. 3. We have the Wachowski, in brackets, writers, directors, producers of The Matrix, Jupiter Ascending movie from 2015. I appreciate its fiction, though it often imitates reality, where whole planets are harvested when the population reaches a certain level. Once the harvest has been processed, an incredibly valuable elixir is produced, which is used to extend the life of those who can afford it. If 1 is an analogy of ascension, 2 an issue humanity needs to address, does 3 stay in the fiction category? Lastly, is it still the case that we should be very wary of physically being taken off planet? I understand large numbers of children are, once they've been removed from deep underground military bases, for healing and logistical reasons. All the best, Sam.
Okay. I would just throw back at you and say fiction. It's not fiction. More than 50% of the films that you've just shared with us are more than fiction. They're actually reality. History, people call it a soft disclosure. It's much more than that. From time to time, individuals or individual are tasked or permitted to release something very serious, and often those people don't have the knowledge themselves. It's given to them. We want you to write a film, and this is the topic, and these are the key elements you will put in, and we will ensure that you get the funding you need to make that film. That's how it happens. Sometimes a person has the knowledge and they go and they get the funding for it, but in a film of that sizable movement, which is the Matrix films, Jupiter Ascending, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and there's a whole list of them. It's much more than the febrile, mad mind of somebody who suddenly wakes up having had a nightmare and wants to do a film. This is planned. It's organized. Many of these people, have their own experiences. We talk about Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek, how he had his own experience, and that led him on to research and to understand. But in many cases, it is the United States military or one of the PSYOP groups of a 3-letter agency who, as part of an experiment, want certain information to be released. But it's not just about the bad guys. The good guys will do it. The good guys will want to warn people. Look at the Matrix. Try deeply to see and understand what that whole message is about, and then try to match that to what is happening on Earth today, and you will find that there's an uncanny match, that it's actually I don't want you to become think it's all over and we can't win. What I'm saying is that the outcome that is shown isn't necessarily the outcome that we will have, but the route that those films take and the activities that occur on the film are very closely mirroring the route that we are taking here on the Earth and the activities that are taking place. So, either it's the elite poking a finger at us and laughing and saying, you are all so stupid, we're actually showing you what we're going to do to you, and you're all going to accept it, so therefore it will happen. Or somebody's trying to say, you better wake up, because this is what is intended for you, and this is the trap. So either way we look at it, we are being handed a piece of information. Goodness knows, 10 years ago I went and like others were doing clips from Hollywood films and saying how they alerted people. There's things from The Simpsons. I know some fake stuff, but there's some real stuff from The Simpsons and many Hollywood films who 10 years in advance of the towers coming down already knew about it. How can they know about it? Did they have a crystal ball? Did they have a time machine? Or did the very people who were going to do this actually say to them, we need you to cover this? So what we're looking at is a valuable conduit of information which those of us who are awake and aware can see what is projected to occur. But for the vast majority of asleep humans, it's just a nice, exciting science fiction film. What was the third part? Because there was he added on a last question or something. Forget it then, it's okay, because I can't. Yeah, it was a multiple questions and I couldn't understand the last bit. But anyway, I have given my answer to that one. So thank you. Okay. Well, we can do a couple more, then I think we're probably running out of time, aren't we?
Just 2 more with quick ones. Okay, Fine. So Isma from Glastonbury in England says, this is a question for our Indian members and perhaps Simon. I get strange updates from my ex-husband, who is an Indian. He said that he is watching Channel 9, an Indian channel, which is talking about a war that is coming already for months. I wonder, as nobody else is talking about it, what is the reason that this channel is talking all the time about it? Perhaps our Indian members can shine a bit of a light into it, or perhaps Simon knows more. Now, Jolene from Portugal says, is this not the border conflict with China? And Isma replies, Channel 9 is saying that there is a sort of Asian confederation with many Asian countries that wish to oppose China. I don't use the right words as English is my second language, but the whole channel is in Hindi, hence I can't understand a word. It is said that America, Taiwan, Indonesia, India and some others are ready to attack China. Personally, I don't believe it, as we never have heard about it, but I just want to know if any Indian members know more, or Simon. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we do have an Indian coordinator. We've got a group in India who are quite active with CC, and I think what we'll do is we'll have a word with them. What I can say to you is that it is actually accurate. There is a loose conglomerate or federation that are very concerned with the Chinese takeover in that part of the world, and there's been some issues with Kashmir, etc., etc. And there is a guerrilla war occurring at the moment along the boundaries, and so it is absolutely accurate that the countries that you've named have signed a secret protocol that they have some vested interest in India, and they fear the expansion of China would damage them, even though it might not be on their own shores. Any sort of effect on India would be a damage to them, and India wanted to broker a wider group of countries so it felt stronger. And you must remember that the President Trump is remarkably a good friend of the Indian Prime Minister. They get on extremely well, unlike, of course, the previous times when America was cozying up to General Zia of Pakistan, and that was a dictatorship actually. And we have a situation now where the elected President of the United States is getting along nicely with the elected Prime Minister of India, and they work this together between them. I think it's not apparent to the general public because the media is so heavily against humanity. I'll say that again. The established media is so heavily against humanity that anything that is positive or anything that could alert people, they absolutely blanket and hide it. And that is the reality here, that we have a situation where a large number of countries that are not centrally within the cabal are actually pushing back against China, and that the next war will not be in the Middle East. We always talk about the next war will be in the Middle East. It won't be. The next potential conflict will be along the border with China. That's a fact. Okay, thank you. Well, one more question.
Okay, yes. This is from Andre from Montreal in Canada,
Okay.
who says, Dear Simon and Becky, just read the latest Benjamin Fulford report, and in it he mentions a group of aliens called the Octagon. Links to the pharaohs of Egypt, Templars, banking, Nazis, communism, NATO. Could it be that all roads lead to Switzerland? God bless you both, and CC.
Thank you.
Okay.
I haven't spoken to Ben Fulford for ages. Why Switzerland never invaded? I think you don't need to go any further with it. I think we've got to be pretty careful because, there are a number of commentators who tell us that the battle is won, it's nearly over, it's all done, dusted, on the retreat, this, that, and the other, and then someone says stick a mask on, and the two don't square. You can't have the cabal, almost about to give in, and then you've got someone knocking on your door finding you £100 because you didn't do this, you didn't do that. So, I've never accepted that. The elite are still there. They're very, very powerful and they're still in control, although they have lost some key battles. I haven't read Ben's blog. I don't generally look at it, not because I don't value it, because it's just tied up with so much else at the moment. And when I have looked at Ben's stuff, he does go from one topic to another quite quickly.
What about the Octagons?
I have no knowledge of Octagons as a living race. I do have knowledge of beings that can project shapes and can effect through shapes. In other words, if you can mimic a crystalline structure, or if you can mimic a natural structure and you can form shapes that we would, like a snowflake shape, or that's actually, snowflake shape's too complicated, couldn't do that, but it could do a more basic, simple shape, then they can effect through that. So I don't have knowledge of a being called an octagon that sort of looks like that, but I do have knowledge of something that can present itself in these interesting shapes. I've never seen it in a triangle.
Not like an octagon, but it says octagon.
I understand that. I've never seen it projected as a triangle. I've seen it projected in shape form. So people will get images of shapes, sometimes with color, sometimes with black and white. There are many, many ways that different beings can communicate with the human race. It's the minority are those that hear a spoken voice. That's the minority. The majority of communications to humans are through a feeling. No words, just I need to do this, or I've got to do that, or this, that, and the other. Then it's through images. It can be a video playing out, still pictures. It can be with normal great shapes. So I don't recognize the name as a being, but I recognize that name that's been used can project images that we would associate with patterns that we might see in our head. Okay, so I'm not saying it's not real, I'm saying it is real, but don't imagine, to my knowledge, a being standing there calling itself that at all. Okay. Right, I think that's it. The dog is turning round.
Time to take a walk.
Thank you very much indeed for listening. Please check out what I'd said to you at the beginning regarding the Superlight computers and the destruction of the telemetry dish. There are some exciting times coming. All eyes, of course, are on the White House and that, but perhaps we need to shift our eyesight a little bit up to the skies. Maybe it is time now to start being aware that external forces are not prepared to see a doomsday situation on the earth. Therefore, we might expect some more intervention, which even the most sleepiest of people might well experience. So thank you very much indeed. So from myself, from my pyramid of granite, lots of love, and speak to you soon. Take care.